Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, man, I got you. Okay, so I got the Armageddon game between Magnus Carlsen and Wesley. So it's an exciting one. It's pretty crazy. It's really interesting to see these games when they start playing them like way faster because like they start to like go in the most craziest directions and stuff like that. But of course, for all my people that are coming from the Philippines, I would say mabuhay to you. Kamusta na aking makaibigan. Hello ulit. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Magandang umaga, 5:52 a.m. in the morning. So I'm Sal Tayo. Appreciate you very much. Anybody who is coming from Norway, I will say God Morgan to you. Hello. Tusen tak for coming by and taking a look at my stuff real quick. But yeah, man, if you guys are ready to go, let's check and see what we got for this game, man. So we got e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4. We see knight to f6. We got d3, just making sure everything is solid, right? We got bishop to c5. So, I mean, pretty similar play by both sides. We do see bishop to g5. We do have the Giuoco Pianissimo game, by the way. But like I always say, these games are rarely quiet, and this game is going to be no exception at all. That's the whole point of them playing on Armageddon and try to make the game decisive. We do see h6. Bishop comes back to h4. We do see d6. We got c3, and this is all really standard stuff. Any of you that have seen my videos before, like this is all very standard stuff that you see in these openings. You know, you're just preventing. This is a little bit of lift. You're just preventing the knight from hopping in. You're giving your bishop a little bit of space. We got a6, a4, just preventing b5, knocking that bishop back. So the bishop does retreat back to a7. We see knight b to d2. Queen comes to e7. We see castles, and then now we see g5. I think Magnus just wanted to kind of wait and see what Wesley So did with his king, because maybe he would have castled queenside, which, I mean, would be a little bit strange, but it's possible. And so, you know, if you did castle queenside, pushing these pawns over here wouldn't really make like the most amount of sense. We do see bishop back to g3. We see knight to h7. We got b4. And so to this point, Wesley So's really killing the space game. We do have a little bit going on for black as far as these two pawns, but, you know, white has a lot of pawns in the center of the board, and so they definitely command a little bit more space, which makes it a little easier for you to maneuver around. We do see knight back to f8. We got b5, knight to a5, and then we do see bishop to d5, which is the novelty of the game. We got c6, of course, attack the bishop. The bishop basically improved its position, so we can't have that. So the bishop comes back to a2. We see knight down to g6. And, I mean, both players are actually really good right now. It's pretty dead even. Even though it's kind of crazy because black has their king just kind of stuck in the center of the board. They're most likely going to probably try to, maybe tuck it to the queen side because you have committed a lot of pawns over here already. So, you kind of want your other rook to kind of be in play. But, we'll see how it goes. We do have a rook over to b1. Pawn takes b5, pawn takes b5, and then we do have pawn takes b5. And this actually gives white a nice tempo. We do have a rook taking b5, and so now this knight kind of, needs to make a decision where it's going to go. You don't really want to play b6. That's just going to be blocking your bishop, and it's going to be helping you play d4, which is something that you really want to get in as white. So we do see knight coming back to c6, bishop back to d5. We see h5, and this is now where we start to get the pawns rolling. And now Wesley So, kind of has a decision to make. He needs to try to figure out what is he going to do with his bishop because h4 is coming pretty quickly. So we do see h3, we got g4, and this is very typical stuff to try to break the position open. Pawn takes g4, pawn takes g4, and then we do have knight to h2. And you do have to be very careful with this. A lot of the times, if your bishop is not here, the queen can kind of creep down into here. And this open H file is pretty juicy. So we do see knight to f4. And of course, because of what I just said, we're not going to be capturing on f4. We got d4. Knight comes back to h5. We do see knight to b3. We see knight back to d8. We are thinking of capturing here, but the problem is after we have captures here and captures here, we do have the rook and the bishop both on that square. So knight coming back to d8 is just to try to defend that so the queen can move. We do see rook over to a5. We got knight taking g3, pawn taking g3. So, at least that pawn is doing, a nice job of defending this square. We do see queen down to g5. We see rook over to e1. You have to prevent this check because if you do allow this check to be thrown in, the king is going to have to sidestep over here, and that just completely drops your knight. So we can't do that. So we do see knight back to c6. Bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6, and then we do have queen over to a1. And it looks very unfortunate in this particular situation because this bishop is severely under fire. So we have actually reached a point in the game that if you do want to pause the video and see what Magnus Carlsen does to try to get out of this piece losing position, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So basically when you're being attacked, I mean, you have to try to look for some type of counterattack somewhere. And also, you know, you're looking for undefended pieces in white's position. And that piece is this knight here. So you have just enough space to go rook to b8, which is what Magnus Carlsen does. You know, if you take my piece, I'm going to take your piece. And that's exactly what we see. The rook takes on a7, and then we do see rook taking b3. So a mutual exchange. The only thing is white definitely has a very severe initiative in this position. You know, they have cleared a little bit of space for their king. So if the queen sidesteps somewhere, you know, we do have knight to f1, and then we can be coming up here. So we do have some breathing room for white. But we see a really, really nice move, queen to a2. And of course, the rook cannot move because we are going to be looking at queen to f7 check. That is pretty nasty. And we really can't defend here. Because this is just going to be dropping this rook over here in the corner like so. You know, this is just going to be this. And I mean, that's just completely just 1000% won. So you have to make very specific moves. So we see the move rook to b7 here. Rook takes b7, bishop takes b7, and then we do have queen to a7. And I mean, it is fairly even. But as you can see, the position is very, very sharp. So, you know, both players are having to find really good attacking and defensive moves. We do see bishop back to c8. We got queen over to c7. And then on move 34, we got castles by black. Don't take this game as an example of when to castle in your games. There are a lot of games that don't even make it to 34 moves. So definitely try to castle as quickly as possible when you're playing your games. Don't wait till move 34. Unless you're Magnus Carlsen, I guess. We do see knight down to f1. We see pawn takes d4, and then queen to f6. Why not tickle this pawn? Let's see if the pawn's ticklish. I mean, you never know, man. You know, some people, you know, when they're playing me, they try to tickle my pieces too, man. You know, my pieces are kind of ticklish sometimes. But we do see rook over to d1, just protecting the pawn. We got c5. So it's interesting because this position right here, if you just take these pawns, this is literally a Sicilian type or a like Carol Khan type of situation with these pawns. It's really kind of interesting. But anyways, we do see pawn taking c5, pawn taking c5, queen taking c5, and then we have bishop to e3. And like I said, everything is completely dead even, but this is Armageddon, and both players, I think around this time, they had about 1.5 to 2 minutes-ish. I know that Wesley had just a little bit more, but he started the game with 3 extra minutes. So, I mean, I'm not sure why they do that. I really don't feel like that's legitimate. I feel like they should just have each player start with the same amount of time, you know, just a lower amount of time. I don't know why they give white 3 extra minutes. But anyways, we do see knight up to e3. We see rook over to c8 attacking the queen. And we do see queen to d6, queen to g5, and then queen coming to f4. And we would absolutely love queen takes f4, pawn takes f4, and then we have a beautiful structure with an extra pawn. But Magnus Carlsen is not doing that. He says queen to c5. We have e5. Rook goes to a8. We see queen to g5 with check. King goes down to h7. We see king up to h2. And this is just like a super accurate move right here. Because literally you're like, hey, man, you're already like pretty much stalemated. So why not lift my king up so I can try to swing rook over and then go something like this and then checkmate you. So it forces black to basically make one of 2 moves. Queen to f8 or rook to h8 or rook to g8. And we see rook to g8. We see queen down to h4 with check. The king goes over to g7. We see a very interesting, I think I probably should have did this as my pause the video section, but you know what? I'll do it again. If you want to pause the video again and try to guess the move that Wesley So plays in this position. Go ahead and do so. Yeah. Yeah, I was about to say, like, I mean, I missed this opportunity. I'm like, man, but I could just do it. Bam. All right, so I think, man, I mean, I don't even think I would have did this personally, man. It feels like it's kind of throwing a piece away, but the move is actually knight to f5 up with check. Now, there are a lot of options. You can go queen back to g5 with check. You know, you can go queen over to f6 with check. Or you can go knight to f5. They're all fairly equal. But like I said, we did see knight to f5 with check. And this is just like pretty much finishing everything pretty nicely. You have to, you know, pretty much take here because there's really nowhere for the king to go. You know, you can't retreat back because that's going to be looking at rook to d8 with mate. If you can't, you have to, I mean, if you move up, I mean, that's going to be check, and then that's going to be mating. So, I mean, you know, you have to take the bishop. They have to take the knight. So the bishop takes the knight on f5. We see queen to f6 with check. And then the king sidesteps over to h7. We see queen takes f5 with check. The king goes to g7. And then we see queen to f6. And it is in this position that Magnus Carlsen resigns the game. And if you are not sure why he resigns the game, it looks pretty even. You know, white has a horrible pawn structure right here, right? Something. I'll show you exactly why. There's two options that you have in this position. The first one is king to fa, and that's just automatic checkmate. Rook to d8 checkmate. But there is also king to h7, and then after we see queen taking f7, we would see rook to g7 blocking. It's just one of the many moves. Queen down to h5 with check, king going back to g8, and then rook to d8 forces the queen in the way, and then you're just winning an entire queen. And it'll be fairly straightforward to go king and queen and a couple of pawns against king and a rook and a pawn. It's pretty simple in-game stuff. But anyway, that is that game. So I appreciate everybody for coming by. Tusen takk if you are coming from Norway. Maraming salamat aking kaibigan hanggang sa muli. I appreciate you guys very much, and I'll see y'all next time.